Only now has the first detailed assessment of its achievements been made public. Central to the whole Allied air strategy was the destruction of Saddam's ability to guard his airspace. And on that, General Schwarzkopf, the American commander, began an upbeat report.
We've attacked air defense nerve systems, striking 29 targets and more than 800 sorties. As a result, the Iraqis have abandoned centralized control of their air defense within Iraq and Kuwait. Very important point.
Crucial to that was the bombing of the Iraqi Air Force headquarters in Baghdad and 25 other so-called leadership targets. In this, the general tonight reported a 60% success rate. On the Iraqi Air Force, he reported 29 aircraft shot down, 3/4 of the air bases attacked, and 70 hardened shelters destroyed. There are many more of those left, and most of the Air Force has survived, but the general is pleased nonetheless.
The simple fact of the matter is that now, every time an Iraqi airplane takes off the ground, it's running away. As a result, Chuck Horner, my CENTAF commander, has now claimed air supremacy.
That's allowed the bombing to continue round the clock with relative impunity. Attacks have been mounted on 33 nuclear, biological and chemical installations. It's the first time that figure's been disclosed, though details on the results were not released. So, after targeting at the start of the campaign Iraq's air bases and headquarters buildings in Baghdad and Basra, and then its Scud missiles, Allied commanders are now focusing on the Republican Guard, Saddam's best divisions, and on their main supply routes, destroying the 33 bridges between Baghdad and Kuwait.
This is the main supply route right here that comes down into Kuwait City. In the past, on any given day, in the early part of the campaign, you could look at that main supply route. At any given time, you'd find about 1,000 trucks on that MSR. Nowadays, whenever we look at it with any of our sophisticated systems, the maximum we find is less than 100. That means about a 90-day degradation, a 90% degradation in its supply rate. If you translate that over to what we know about its supply rate, it takes him about 20,000 tons per day to support the troops in Kuwait. We feel that we've reduced him to about 2,000 tons per day.
And B-52s, just as in Vietnam, are bombing the Republican Guard positions all the time. 470 tons were dropped by them today alone. According to the general, it's inflicting continuous damage, and he highlighted the attack on the largest Iraqi ammunition dump in Kuwait.
We had one spectacular explosion on the 28th of January. Let me give you a reference. If on a scale of 1 to 10, the eruption of a volcano registered 10, and the recent explosion at the Soviet rocket propellant plant would register a 9, the explosion, the secondary explosion we had the other day, registered a 12.
But that's the exception. Usually it's aerial photographs, painstakingly processed and examined, that yield the intelligence needed to make an assessment. All of this starts off secret, and most of it remains so. Even so, the general asserts his strategy is working.
By every measure, our campaign plan is very much on schedule. Now, there's no way that I'm suggesting that the Iraqi army is close to capitulation and going to give up. I think their actions last night have proven that to all of us. But I'm quite confident that the direction we're heading in is going to lead to exactly the outcome that we all want to see.
Unanswered, of course, were the questions about when the ground war would start. But having achieved surprise at the very beginning of the campaign, the general will do all he can to maintain it.
For the first time, the Americans demonstrated how they've been blowing up the bridges that are used to supply Iraqi troops in Kuwait. On this occasion, heavy cloud cover means the attack has to be hasty, but it's no less effective for that. But then General Schwarzkopf showed what he said is the best way to knock out a bridge.
We try and hit right near the shore, I've been told, because that's the most difficult to repair and does the most damage if you get in at that point. That's one end of the bridge. You'll now see the same bridge again. Notice that's where we hit before. The span's gone. We're now hitting the other end of that railroad bridge. I'm now going to show you a picture of the luckiest man in Iraq.
A vehicle can be seen driving across this bridge moments before it's destroyed.
And now in his rearview mirror,
Mobile Scud missile launchers are also a priority target. Here, American bombers find a whole host of them, the long, dark shapes on the ground. They're easy prey, according to Brigadier General Buster Glosson.
There are a total of 11 vehicles in this area, and all of these are already loaded with Scud missiles. As you can see, these have already been fired.
The Scud launchers are attacked with laser-guided bombs, a simpler task, say the Americans, now that they've achieved virtual air supremacy. There are precious few Iraqi planes that have come up to challenge the Allied Air Force. This video tells the story of one that tried and failed. Seen through the eyes of an American F-15 pilot, an Iraqi MiG-25 is the target in what they call the kill box on the right-hand side of the screen. A heat-seeking missile is fired but misses. Then a radar missile does destroy the MiG.
3, red, splash! Splash coming out westbound!
Most of the Iraqi Air Force, though, have decided not to fight, but to hide in hardened aircraft shelters like this one. They, too, are targets for the Allies, whether there are planes in them or not. Once again, the Americans have used the power of their cockpit pictures to show the success so far of Desert Storm. Once again, though, we haven't seen the targets they missed. But this demonstration was probably designed to dispel doubts that have recently been raised about the effectiveness of the Allied campaign. Ben Brown.
For him celebrating today President Roosevelt's great speech of 50 years ago on the 4 fundamental human freedoms which underpin the wartime coalition against Hitler is more than just history. It's the politics of the moment.
It is our commitment to the New World Order that takes us to the sands and the seas of the Gulf. And we're there because we realize that each of Roosevelt's 4 freedoms leads us to the greatest of all human aspirations, the freedom to live in peace.
Roosevelt's freedom of expression, of worship, freedom from want and from fear are still America's moral guides, Mr. Bush said.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States!
In his State of the Union address, the first for a generation to America at war, the president praised those doing what he called the hard work of freedom.
There is no one more devoted, more committed to the hard work of freedom than every soldier and sailor, every Marine, airman, and Coast Guardsman, every man and woman now serving in the Persian Gulf.
That mention of the troops provoked a 4-minute, highly emotional standing ovation as George Bush turned his State of the Union into a state of the war.
Tonight I am pleased to report that we are on course. Iraq's capacity to sustain war is being destroyed, but the world has to wonder what the dictator of Iraq is thinking. If he thinks that by targeting innocent civilians in Israel and Saudi Arabia, that he will gain advantage, he is dead wrong. And if he thinks that by abusing the coalition prisoners of war, he will benefit, he is dead wrong.
Democrats in Congress believe that unlike President Roosevelt, Bush hides abroad from an economic crisis at home. Yet the Bush model is not the Roosevelt who moved America towards a welfare state, but the Second World War leader, commander of the arsenal of democracy, and architect of a new peace after a difficult conflict.
The winds of change are with us now. The forces of freedom are together, united. And we move toward the next century more confident than ever.
Gavin Esler.
The Iraqi president has given Arnett a long interview saying America has been defeated.
And the details, the daily details of the developments will come to show how much of a defeat they have been dealt.
He was amiable, but I guess the impression I got was his deep resolve and confidence. But the impression was he wanted to communicate through us to world opinion makers, or at least world people.